You may begin.
Good evening. The time is now 5:36. I would like to call to order the May 15th, 2023 Academic Achievement Committee meeting. I am Dr. Zipporah Miller, Chair of the committee and the District 5 representative of the Prince George's County Board of Education. If everyone could please introduce themselves, starting with the board members who are members of the committee, and then guest board members, and then the Prince George's County Public Schools administrative staff and the board staff in that order. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sheila Adams Stafford, and I'm the Vice Chair of the Academic Achievement Committee, and I'm the board member for District 4. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Brandon Jackson, and I am the board member for District 6.
Hi, I'm Judy White, Chief Academic Officer.
And good evening, Doug Strader, Chief Accountability Officer.
Brian Simmons, Acting Supervisor of People County.
Good evening, Kia McDaniel, Director of Curriculum and Instruction.
Good evening, Jazanne Manzano-Lee, Coordinating Supervisor for Specialty Programs.
Good evening, Rihanna McCarter, Manager of People Accounting and School Boundaries.
Good evening, Kiana Petacolis, Associate, People Accounting and School Boundaries.
Good evening, Jessica Guerrero, Administrative Secretary for the Board Office.
Thank you so much. Ms. Guerrero, could you please call the roll?
Yes, Dr. Zipporah Miller.
Present, sorry.
Mrs. Adams Stafford.
Here.
Mr. Valentine. Mr. Cerrone Ruiz. And Mr. Jackson.
Present.
We have quorum.
Thank you. May I have a motion to adopt the May 15th, 2023 meeting agenda?
So moved.
You have a second? Ms. Adams Stafford?
I have a question. Is the specialty programs work group also on the agenda, the proposal for that under specialty programs?
It is not on the agenda, but we are discussing the specialty program. So if you want to bring it up in the discussion, you may do
During
so.
that time?
Yes.
Yes, I second.
All in favor? Signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. The agenda is adopted. May I have a motion to approve the April 17th, 2023 meeting minutes?
So moved.
Have a second?
Okay, second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The meeting minutes are approved. At this time, we do not have any public comment, so we can move forward to item 3.0. Dr. Judith White, I will now yield the floor to you and your team and colleagues to present this evening's agenda, specialty programs from application to acceptance.
Thank you so much. On behalf of Dr. Strader and myself, our two teams here, you've noticed the trend by now that while certain things reside potentially in one shop, it takes many of us to actually make this work happen. And so all of the colleagues are here this evening, and you will have an opportunity to hear from them to see what part they play in making sure that our specialty programs from beginning to end occur. And so, Desanne, are you sharing your screen tonight?
Yes, I am, and I will do so now, Dr. White.
Thank you.
Are you able to see the screen?
We are, thank you.
Thank you. So thank you for this opportunity for us to share the wonderful and dynamic specialty programs from application to acceptance. As Dr. White shared, this is truly a collaborative effort, and the Division of Academics could not do this without our dedicated partners across the district. Something is amiss. 1 second. There we go. So we will again discuss an overview of the life cycle of the Prince George's County Public Schools Specialty Programs application process. In Prince George's County Public Schools, our specialty programs provide an expansion of curricular options for students in pre-K through 12th grade by providing them with a choice of unique learning opportunities focused on a specific interest. And so I'm not going to read this entire chart to you, but we are very proud that we have something, just about something for everyone, from Montessori to aerospace, to options in charter school, to our science and tech, to our creative and performing arts, to immersion. Prince George's County Public Schools prides itself in offering programs that are of students' interest, passion, and serve their needs. Our specialty programs is primarily organized and housed into 3 different areas that provide oversight, monitoring, and guidance. Under our area offices, we have the Academy of Health Sciences, our online program, our international high schools, as well as our charter schools. The Department of Student Services is responsible for the 3D Scholars Program, and under the Division of Academics, Dr. West is responsible for our CTE programs, our creative and performing arts. Under curriculum and instruction, we have aerospace, IB, immersion, science and technology, and talented and gifted. And we also have our early learning programs, and that's our Montessori program. We will not bore you by reading the entire list in the next 2 slides, but for your convenience, we've outlined our specialty programs from pre-K through 12th grade and also provided a link to each program so that you can learn more about each program and also easily access where the programs are located. This year, we were excited that at the pre-K through 8th grade level, we had a total of 14,201 applications. And that includes applications from charter schools, creative and performing arts, French immersion, Montessori, Spanish immersion, and our talented and gifted program. At the high school level, we received 8,250 applications. It's important to note that for our science and tech and aerospace program, there's not an application for current PGCPS 8th grade students. All 8th grade students are considered for that program, and in a later slide, we'll go into the criteria for that program. We've also highlighted that we've received 935 non-PGCPS science and technology applications for 8th grade, 197 PGCPS science and technology applications for 9th graders, because if you are a 9th grade student wishing to have a seat, you must apply. 257 non-PGCPS students for the aerospace program, and 47 current 9th grade PGCPS students applied for a seat in the aerospace program. So the life cycle of the PGCPS specialty programs application process. The cycle truly never ends. So from August to September, We are immersed in providing information to our community via back-to-school presentations. And those are presentations created out of the Division of Academics. We have an ongoing marketing campaign. Staff in the division, in the Department of Communications remain an awesome collaborative partner with us, and they help us to publicize that information. And we do that from September through February. We hold a fall middle school professional school counselor session where our middle school counselors come in and they receive information, in-depth information about choices for students transitioning to high school. We also mail postcards home to the families of every single PGCPS 8th grade student, letting them know about their options in high school, as well as advertising our specialty programs showcase. The submission of application opens in October and runs through March, depending on the specialty program. Many of our high school programs also elect to hold open houses where parents can receive additional information, and that takes place from September through December. And around October or November, we are pleased to hold a fall pre-K through 12 specialty program showcase. And in the next coming months, you'll receive a save the date with information, and we'd love for you to join us this year. Our application notification process takes place in February or end March. We are very cognizant that our families have many options to choose from, Prince George's County being one of them, private schools being another option, as well as homeschool. And so we work really hard to ensure that families are able to make the best decision for their children, and we aim to notify them by March, and we met that deadline this year. And then we have our acceptance window from March through April from the majority of our programs. I'll now turn it over to my colleague, Ms. Peticolas, that will take you through the charter school lottery process.
Thank you, Devane. And so the life cycle for the K through 5 specialty programs and charter school process, that is handled through the Office of Pupil Accounting and School Boundaries. As Devane mentioned with their office, we participate with them when it comes to the academic showcase. We publicize the information through the websites for the school system, as well as sending out notification through the actual specialty charter schools and program schools. We have a total of 21 specialty program schools. The programs for our K through 5 are our creative and performing arts, our immersion programs, our Montessori, and our talented and gifted programs. We also have 9 public charter schools that are approved through the charter school office. During our application process for the admissions program, that is conducted through a lottery process. That process opens up in November of every school year and runs through the end of January, typically the last Friday in January. Most recently this year, we did extend it to February because we had a recent change with the dates. And so this allowed parents, because they were more familiar with our previous time frame, to make sure that they did have the opportunity to submit those applications. Once applications are submitted, they are submitted online through our online portal. Our office has to go through a screening process where we have to verify the applications for eligibility. We have to verify our Montessori program. There's a prerequisite for our kindergarten through 8th grade students that apply for admission. We have to verify our talented and gifted students, that they have to go through a tag identification process through the academics office, as well as the upper grades for creative and performing arts have to go through an auditions process. We also have, with one of the emergence programs, our dual language program, which is Cesar Chavez. And that program, we have a 50-50 admission process for our kindergarten students, where 50 of those seats are held for students that are Spanish speaking fluently, because that process is more of a dual language versus immersion. We also have to screen eligibility for incoming kindergartners and first grade students for specialty and charter. Maryland State requires an age requirement for entry into kindergarten and first grade for those programs, where students have to be 5 by September 1st or 6 by September 1st, as long as they were Maryland residents. Once we are able to screen all those applications, we notify families regarding their eligibility. So in case that there are any discrepancies with what we have determined, there is time to reconcile that data prior to actually running the actual lottery process. The lottery process is done through an outside vendor to increase transparency with families. Notification then typically goes out via email to those families in March, and we continue to make placements up until our September 30th deadline. This makes sure that we get all students in prior to that deadline, where we do our reporting and families are able to start the instruction at that time. Dizanne, back to you.
Thank you. And so I mentioned earlier that all 8th grade students are considered for a placement in our science and technology and aerospace program. The PSAT is one factor in determining a student's eligibility. The PSAT is administered to all Prince George's County Public Schools 8th grade students at middle school in November. Non-PGCPS students and PGCPS 9th grade students participate in a Saturday administration. Scores from the assessment are used as part of the criteria. The following programs utilize the scores to determine eligibility: our AHS programs at the Prince George's Community College, our AEAT, and our Science and Technology programs. The PSAT score is combined with the student's grade to determine eligibility, and you have a visual that identifies the total possible score of a 2880. How are we making an impact? We continue to engage with not only our current students, but former students as well as teachers. And when you have some time, I won't read this entire slide to you. You'll see that we maintain contact with students who have gone on to do wonderful things, students who are in college, students who work for the federal government, to really learn from their experience and to see what recommendations they have for us to move forward. Our next steps include increasing our marketing opportunities, providing targeted marketing support to families of our English learners, exploring an application platform that makes it more streamlined for our parents, and distributing a student and parent survey. And at this time, Dr. Miller, I will turn it over to you for questions.
Thank you so much. So, colleagues, any questions? Don't see any hands. Oh, sorry. Board Member Adam Stafford, thank you.
Hi, yes. Hold on one second. Yes, first of all, thank you so much for this presentation. And I always tell people when I'm talking to them from other counties, hold on one second. I tell them about all of the really great school options that we have here in the specialty programs that we have. And I always just joke with my friends in other places. I say, you're not going to get Chinese immersion with your youngest child, or you're not going to get the opportunity for a Spanish immersion at Montessori. And I just really love telling them about all of the really great specialty programs that we had here. So I just want to say thank you so much. And you guys know these meetings fall during like the craziest hour of my life every day. So just excuse all the screaming, yelling, and toys happening right here. But what I would wanted to ask more specifically about was if you could share a little bit more about the application process. I know that's probably one of the biggest questions that I get from community members. I mean, I've actually had a chance to share some of the feedback with Dr. White. Folks have asked questions about just the notification process within the applications. Some people often are feeling a bit lost after they've entered, and just having a lack of clarity on who they should be in contact with, whether it's the school or the district. And so I have a few families that have put together some suggestions on how to make the application itself more accessible for different specialty programs, especially for the younger children. So maybe if you could just speak more to maybe some of the ways in which you've identified that there could be a bit more be a bit more accessible. And then also, I had a question regarding just the sites that are chosen for different programs. So in my community, you know, I'm so blessed to be right here next to Charles Flowers, where we have so many programs, and the school is literally bursting at the seams. We have, you know, so many students at that school, and that's another main challenge that a lot of families have reached out to me about. And just wondering, you know, is there sort of like a application that schools undergo to have a program come to their school? Because I know that in schools that are close by to us, they may not have the same amount of programs that are here at Flowers. And so just wanting to know a little bit more about the process behind that. Thank you so much.
So Dezanne, before you get started, let me just say last year, all of our programs used Scribs, and board member Adam Stafford, that could have been a lot of, you know, in the middle of the pandemic, we used Scribs for that. We used it for registration. This year, we went back to, for the majority of our programs, using Google Forms. I'll let Dezanne speak about that. And then Bryant, you can speak about Scribs. And then board member Adam Stafford, you may want to just share what the concerns, but if both of you, Dezanne and Bryant, could share just the programs and then how it gives them communication around next steps, et cetera.
Thank you, Dr. White and Board Member Adams. We are always reflecting on how we can refine our processes to make it easier for our families. So I appreciate the question. As Dr. White said, this year, many of our programs went back to utilizing Google Forms at the high school level, and the concerns compared to last school year have been minimal. So that is a win, and we're excited about that. We communicate contact information in a variety of ways. We share that information via the district's newsletter. As I shared, we have a wonderful partnership with Communications. They promote the events and contact information on social media. We maintain communication with our professional school counselors. We place the information not only on the main PGCPS webpage, but also on the website of individual schools to make it easier for parents to access that information. And so utilizing the Google Forms this year, each high school program had their own form, and parents were able to select the program that they were interested in applying for, submit that application, and then they received feedback from the program coordinator. Bryant?
Thank you, Dezanne. Email provides wait lists from Scribs. If the award placement is via email, schools will follow up with the award with the placement from Scribs. So that's basically the setup of how and when it goes out via Scribs.
So I think one of the challenges that there must be a breakdown at some sites where parents are not getting that communication from the school. And so they're waiting on for like a district communication with them. And I actually was saying to Dr. White, it might be beneficial maybe if there could be on the website some type of just a quick how-to video or like a checklist, just so that parents aren't waiting for that email from the school. And then what happens is, as you know, like people will go make other plans because they're like, well, I didn't hear if I got into the program. And then oftentimes there's some miscommunication, I think. So if there could be just, possibly a way to help make that particular component, I guess, clearer for folks, because I do get a lot of questions and concerns about that particular.
Adam Stafford, when we had that conversation, it was more around pre-K, which I can understand
okay.
that component, because pre-K is a boundary program. If you go to your boundary school, they have to let you know where you come off the list. So that is a school. So I can
Okay, see what you're saying. Okay.
specialty program. You get a letter. That letter indicates what program you have gotten into. That in that letter is the contact information for the program in which you have been approved, it gives all the directions. It says when we're having our open house, it says, here's the contact person, the email address, and they then start communicating directly with the school. The school will give them when they should come and register. Also on our website, where we say how to apply for specialty programs, we have a chart that lists every last program. It has the application link. It has all the dates associated with it. So that falls a little, I do understand, and I have communicated about pre-K, and we've already made some of those adjustments already on the website. I went back that day and made those adjustments. But that's a little bit different, and I can understand that because those schools direct communicate. But this program, they get everything they need in that acceptance or denial packet.
I'm sorry I was confused there. Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Simmons. Thank you, Dr. White, for clarifying that for me.
No problem. And then I'll take that other question that you asked. So we have programs in certain sites. What happens too is that the neighborhoods themselves, the community itself grows, and then therefore schools can become bigger than what it was when we put a program somewhere. Normally, what I would say when we're establishing a program, we try to look across all the districts, all the board members. We try to make sure, because we know we don't have things in every school, that we at least have a program north or south of the district, like partnering, and or north, central, and south, until we get to something where we say like the Immersion High School. Well, the Immersion High School is going to boom, center of the district, right? Or Academy of Health Sciences, the individualized program, center of the district. Outside of that, we try to pick schools north and south. If we build any new programs, we'll try to say we'll find a school that doesn't currently have a program, because we are paying attention, which is why I do have Rihanna McCarter on here, because her office helps us identify. We have to look at several things, and Rihanna, you can jump in and just kind of share what are those things that we're looking for when we're looking at school sites, the things that you have to take into consideration.
Absolutely. And Judy, I mean, you're right on the right path. Geography is really important. So, and then the key there is travel distance. So again, looking at if it's going to be a county-wide program, as centrally located as possible. If we can have two locations, something centrally located in the north, or and then a complementary program in the south. For some programs, we have like TAG. There are sites kind of scattered throughout the county. And when we're looking for new sites, we're again taking geography, capacity, and enrollment sort of in consideration. So looking, where do we have space? Does that school already have a program? Because like Dr. White said, we try to distribute them and not put multiple programs at one school. That does happen sometimes with the high schools, because the programs might align with each other, be able to share resources. But that's generally what our criteria is.
Thank you. I know my colleagues have questions as well.
Thank you so much. Board Member Jackson.
Thank you. So while you guys were talking, you kind of answered, Dr. White answered the majority of my question was about how do we pick which schools the specialty programs are going to go to. But another question is, is how do we determine so once for example, like I had some concerns from my community about Central High School. And I know that one of the programs is coming out of Central High School. And so I was going to ask, so after we move, or if we're moving the program from a school, how do we determine what we're going to do to backfill that program with another program? Like, do we working with the community to identify different, synergies or opportunities that will, fit really well into the high school? So I kind of wanted to know what that process looks like.
Yeah, so I'll take that question also. So you're right. One of the things that we do, I want you to know that we are try to make sure that we don't just put programs there and leave them, not evaluate, not monitor, not follow it through. And so, pretty often we're looking at what enrollment looks like. We're looking at, and so I'll use IB as a good example. We spend a lot of dollars on having IB in schools. So we start looking at how many students are coming through with an IB diploma. How many students are coming through where we at least expose them to an IB course? Because that's not a bad thing that you get exposed to an IB course, because if you take that course, you take the assessment, you pass the assessment, it still can equate to college credits for any student, depending on the school or college they may attend. But if we notice a trend over time where we have few parents coming into that program, where we have few students taking courses or few students passing, then we have to say, is that somewhere where we want to maintain a program? In that instance, we work with the board member. We work first and foremost, we work with the school, we work with the CEO, we make recommendations, we bring it to exec cabinet, we talk it through. We have conversations with the principal before we make any final decisions. We have conversations with the board member of that particular school, because we want to ensure that when they're also in the face of parents, that we're all on the same page. And then we start talking to parents about disabling. Know that in our district, when we disable a program, we never snatch a program. So where you have seen us disable, if students are there, we allow them to finish out. So for example, I would use the immersion program as another example. So the immersion program, the new high school will have all the high schools, all of the students that are currently in a middle school taking a world language that's in an immersion program will have the opportunity to now enter into Largo as ninth graders starting in the 23-24 school year. For the past however many years, French was the only high school program we had, and it resided at Central. All the students that are currently at Central will be allowed to stay. I don't care if I end up with one student there. I'm going to leave all my supports, all my teachers at Central until I get that one student out. Then we'll backfill Largo to bring every student that's now in French over to Largo, entering into the ninth grade. What we normally do is when we take a program out of a school, there are reasons normally that we do. So we want to support the school. We want to get the school in a position where they can receive a program. And when they're at a space where they can receive a program that we can ensure they can get off the ground lifted. We don't have staffing issues and other things we try to replace with something that can be beneficial and exciting, because we know we want parents to have a draw in the community. And so you look at Potomac, for example, we didn't have that on here, but we have Potomac and Surrattsville are 3DE programs. They're not specialty programs because they're school-wide programs. So as programs like that continue to roll out, we will look at certain schools that don't have anything to say, where's a good fit? Sometimes you have to get the academic program solid and rich before you can add something onto it that distracts from what the core of the work is. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, it definitely did. I guess, and then I guess a follow-up question, because like you said, the parents of the community, people of the community, have reached out to me with concerns about this specific issue, of course. But both schools, Largo is in my district as well. So it's like, they're like, are you sending all my kids to Largo? You know how they go. So my question is, like, what are the challenges? Or since I know you guys done this before, so what are some of the challenges that you foresee? I understand that you'll have the staff there to, accommodate the students, but what are the challenges that the school, I guess, aggregately will go through by transitioning one of the world languages out of the school? Like, do you see any other ramifications that may happen?
No, because reality is they have other world language programs there. And if I showed you the number of students that are in their program, we're talking about 40 total, 9th to 12th grade, right? And so in a school-wide composition, it's really no impact to the school. Whatever other world languages the school has, they will continue to have. because through their student-based budgeting, they're allowed to purchase world language positions. And remember that when we talk about a program like IB wasn't just for Central students. Central happened to be the location for a particular boundary of students that would filter through several high schools. That's where they would filter for that IB program. Same with French immersion. Now Central captured all students, but we didn't have a lot of our students leaving two full French immersion programs heading into Central. Now, that's no knock to Central, because remember, I have science and tech, I have aviation, I have, so parents now, while their student has been through French immersion, kindergarten on up, by the time they leave 8th grade, if you've been in that program that whole time, you are fluent. For most of our kids, they are at a place where they get the seal of biliteracy, some of them leaving out of middle school. So their parents choose, well, I don't necessarily need that high school option. My student wants to do science and tech, or they want to try to get into another program, a CTE program. So it's multiple avenues by the time we get there. But the number of children, even IB and Kia, I think, or Desan, you can jump in. I don't know that we had even 30 students there. So we're not talking about moving a lot. And when we talk about allowing what's there to stay, they'll be able to finish out there, and we'll start any new 9th grader in the new location.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. White. You answered my question, because I know that when they go through programs that are K-8, such as Montessori and French immersion, many of them opt to just consider other options, not because, and you just can't answer that, where they will say, you know what, I'm fluent in French, let me try science and tech. I'm fluent, let me go to IB, rather than follow through with the French immersion through K-12. Board Member Valentine?
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for this session. Thank you, Chairwoman Miller. This is probably one of my last committee assignments. I'm going to be on the board and leaving soon. But I think it's probably the most important one I've probably attended. I've been talking about the importance of these programs since I started. Before I started, I'm a specialty parent. My daughter and son both attended John Hanson Montessori from age 3, and quickly understood just the impact of the program on students, on student achievement, but also the logistics around this. And we talked about this a little bit, where a lot of parents who got into the program because it was half day did not take the seat because they could not figure out the transportation half day. And so I quickly understood the logistics of this. And I don't want to dig too deep into that, because I think you all have done a great job of outlining this. Some of you also know my son attends the P-TECH High School at Douglas. Again, an amazing program. He loves it and is doing extremely well. But I think a lot of, my questions are kind of dig deeper than just the logistics of, where a school is placed. But more so overall, just sort of how we use what we learn from our programs to support, the rest of the students in the district, but also to how we're looking at the next school we create, the next program, the next immersion program, and how that process of determining what language we choose next, what type of school do we prioritize, and so I guess my question is, can you talk a little bit about how we go about making the decision about creating a new immersion program? I know the Chinese immersion program is a bit newer. But as you're thinking about determining a new school program, a new school model, talk to me through the process of how we go about doing that.
So normally, what I would say to that is, we actually have some really good school models. And I think the challenge that we face is ensuring that in order to facilitate and continue to have great models, that we make sure that the current models we have in place are staffed, that we're constantly out trying to find the right staff. And I'll use Montessori as a good example. And Board Member Valentine, you would know this because your children went through Montessori as well as mine, is that you have to have a certified Montessori teacher where they're not hanging out. So like where we could say, we would love to, really make sure if we could open another Montessori, we would love it because we know it works, right? But we've got to find those teachers. We've got to keep those certifications up. And it's hard. It's hard. When we lose a Montessori teacher, like right now, we're scrambling. to try to ensure that we can find another. Same with our immersions. While we have, I think he shares 11 programs, when we lose a teacher, we're scrambling, trying to ensure, because one absence of a teacher that's specialized crumbles a program in a particular grade for a child. So what I will say is, one of the things, and Dezanne, I'll let you jump in and talk about, one of the things that we thought about, that we are doing, not thought about, but that we're in the process of doing, is I think we as a system have to be in a posture that if for some reason additional funds come, we can bring about a new program. What does that look like? So we had to put ourselves in a structure to say, what does it cost for me to open a program from scratch? What are all the things I need? So what we're doing right now is taking all of our programs, working through what would it take, like, for me to pay for this position, how will we start it out? What is the grade? And I'm making every single program do that. And Dezanne is running that effort. Because what we need, if all of us were to disappear, not be here, and somebody new says, I want to jumpstart a Montessori program, where would they go to start? Right? We're also trying to say, how do we make sure every program has a handbook? Every program, because we know principles change, and you want to make sure that whether leaders come and go, that we have everything laid out for anybody trying to lead. I think the pandemic took some years off of us on where we can go, the trajectory we can go, and how we bring things in. And we're now back to a place where staffing is an issue, and we're trying to figure out how to maintain, and not just maintain, but maintain at a level of rigor, and maintain at a level of which we want the program to be implemented, and implemented with greatness. Dezanne, can you talk a little bit about what we've seen with the fluctuation of parents that are applying, where we've had to open up lotteries again to allow more parents to come in because we're not seeing the numbers?
Sure, Dr. White. So we've seen a tremendous improvement between last year and this year. And I think that is due to the fact of things are settling down. We are returning to a sense of normalcy. And so parents, we know, are stretched in many different directions. So we have been extremely aggressive in marketing our programs, being intentional about our strategy with communicating with our parents. So we are reaping the benefits of that. This year, we have not had to reopen as many applications as we did last year. We have not heard as many, I missed the deadline, or my family was impacted by COVID, so I did not know. That has been extremely, extremely low this year. And that's a positive for us. And so we continue this. One thing that I should share with you all is the high school specialty programs coordinators. We meet once a month. We just said we'll be meeting tomorrow. We discuss the entire application process. Tomorrow, we will be discussing what worked well this year. We will take some time to reflect on some obstacles and challenges that we faced, how we handle them, so we can move forward next year. So that's another way that we continue to grow and support each other and support our families. And we have very transparent and courageous conversations. And if a program looks at their numbers and realizes that, hey, my numbers are really low, we discuss what can we do. Who else is experiencing this challenge? Why are you experiencing this challenge? And where maybe we have fallen short of promoting that program and getting the message out to our families. And we have no problem reopening a window and making sure that everyone knows about it, not just the one parent who says, hey, I missed the deadline, what can I do? We want to make sure that our process is always fair and always equitable. And that's what we try to do. And we do that also in collaboration with pupil accounting. Rihanna has been guiding us through the process. Now our programs should be settling down on how many students have accepted their seats. And more importantly, not just I've accepted my seat, but I have registered and I have shown the appropriate documentation to say that I do live in this boundary zone. This is my seat. And so Rihanna's team runs a report for us every day that we analyze to see how the seats and the registration numbers are coming in. We look at duplicate registrations because sometimes that happens. And we reach out to our programs and our families to say that Kia McDaniel's mom has accepted a seat in IB as well as science and tech. Mrs. McDaniel, which is the program that you really want for Kia, and then we work with parents in that manner.
And then Board Member
Well-
Valentine, I will also just say, you know, we think about high school, and I know CTE came before and dual enrollment. We also try to make sure that our parents realize that your child, even outside of us, like we will pay for them to go and have a dual enrollment class. We want to bring more dual enrollment into the school. This year, science and tech grew, CTE grew to over 4,000 applications. So, you know, how are we branding? And then just for you all to know, like Montessori specifically in immersion, if you do not come in kindergarten, the only way in is either immersion to test in, and in Montessori to have been to an outside Montessori program because of the type of learning. You can't just pop in. So that's why when you start looking at our Montessori schools, by the time they get to middle school, let's say by then their child has tested for tag. Now they want to go to a tag center, right? So now you end up with Montessori 8th grade classrooms that started out with over 100 could be down to like 40 students leaving out of 8th grade because we can't backfill based on the criteria. So we're constantly looking, you know, trying to figure out when new programs come again, where we can put them, what do we want to duplicate? But I think until we see a leveling that we have staff and we have an abundance to where we could fill it, it becomes a difficult challenge.
I also want to add, Mr. Valentine, to your question about how we identify new specialty programs, that our team, they are some of the hardest working people you will ever meet. They are constantly researching. They are immersed in becoming better professionals. They seek opportunities, they engage opportunities. And so they are always bringing ideas to me, to Dr. McDaniel, beating her door down. We always have a proposal and a bright idea that we submit to Dr. White of how we can do more to meet the varied needs of our students. And we have been so pleased this year to have a visit from the leadership at MSDE to learn from us how we engage in creating our specialty programs. And in April, we had a district from North Carolina come visit us, and we spent 2 days with them, crisscrossing the county to share with them some of our best practices because they want to learn about bringing specialty programs to their district.
No, thank you very much. I appreciate your responses. I guess my question also, and this is something again that we've been dealing with since I've been on the board, which is this idea of especially programs being for a specific demographic, or the assumption that these programs are only for parents from a certain income. And I'm proud to say, particularly the school, the program my son is in and my daughter and are pretty diverse economically. As you know, as some of you all know, I do travel nationally, and I'm always talking about my district. And we are an anomaly. This is not normal. And I just try to reiterate that to people here. They just don't believe me. But to have as much choice as we have, it is quite unusual, not only nationally, but it's also in the state. And so my second question, particularly around this idea that if you look at our specialty programs and look at student outcomes, at least my experience and most recent that I've seen, they do skew higher. And so the question is, how do we use what we learn from how students who are entering into specialty programs perform? And again, this to me, this cuts across income and demographics. So this could be a potential sort of group to look at and to extrapolate across the district, because there is income diversity and racial diversity. And so when you see these outcomes, student outcomes from these programs, how do we take that and use that to inform how we apply it to the rest of the district? Because again, this gets to the whole idea of my child got into a program, my child didn't get into a program, and so I lost out, and so becomes a have and a have not. And I just want us to sort of cut through that with being able to highlight that what we learned from our specialty program, from our charter schools, from all the schools that are performing well, here's what we learned, and here's how we can apply it to the rest of the district.
Yeah, it's interesting. Dr. McDaniel and I were talking today about Montessori mathematics, and we were like, Yeah, like we look at our comprehensive kids and they're going through all this stuff. And you look at Montessori, they learn it a totally different way and they perform. So we're always know that we're having these conversations constantly with each other. But what I would say, and as a parent like you, who both of my children went through Montessori, I think when you get smaller programs and you it's like summer school. And y'all always like, well, how's summer school? It's like, yeah, you work with 10 students, just 10 students, right? And we know that our specialty programs, it's a smaller model. You have, that coordinator there or that principal. It's just a smaller cohort. And so it drives a certain way. I think where we can grab instructional practices, I send my content team goes through our specialty programs to watch. They're building some of the content places where it comes with certain content. They still go through and watch. We watch what students are doing to try to figure out what those best practices are. But I think a lot of it comes from the philosophy of those leaders that run those smaller programs with the like mind and moving kids through. But it's something that we grapple with. It's something that we try to continually watch for to find, even in our regular comprehensive, we have some comprehensive schools that are just performing and do a great job. And we try to go there too, to say, what is it? Is it the leadership behaviors? Is it, the teacher efficacy about what they believe and say to children about learning? Is it the music they play in the hall between every single class? Like you try to think what's the thing that gets it. So I don't think that's something we ever stop doing, ever stop trying to learn from. But we do identify that our students in our specialty programs are performing. What the one thing is, I don't know, but know that we're constantly having this conversation and constantly trying to say, well, if they've tapped it, why can't we steal a little of that and push it over here? It is definitely a conversation that we continue to have.
Well, thank you. I'll wrap up and I'll just say, Dr. You may have been with me when we traveled to New York to visit the International High School. You may not have been there, but I was there.
Yeah, I think was Kia. Were you there? Yeah.
Yeah, took the train up.
Yeah, I was there.
And so I was there at the ideation of this idea. We're going to bring this International High School. We're going to have two of them. We've got this grant. And it was really cool to see it from like, a thought to where we are now and how at that school compared to similar students outside, around the county. I just hope that we will continue to have that. And, I may not have any connection to the new superintendent, but recommend that he or she continue to push the envelope on innovation. I mentioned this is why this is a really important committee hearing, because this is where the innovation is in our district. This is where the magic happens. This is where people are calling me saying, Curtis, I want to talk about the future of high school, but I want to know about this Academy of Health Sciences. You got a teacher prep program, and we'd have teacher shortages. Like, what are you talking about? The P-TECH, the IB, the whatever you want to call it. This is where we're getting a lot of the attention. There are also other models nationally. I'll just throw out a school that I hope you all will look at. It's called the Purdue Polytechnic High School in Indianapolis. Okay. It's a partner with the Purdue University, but it's a similar dual enrollment, but it also has a very unique way to give high school students a sense of autonomy and how they choose their schedule. They actually teach us to their schedule on a week-to-week basis. So they're assessed every Friday or Thursday or Friday. And then they use that to sign up for teachers the following week, and they sign up sort of like office hours. And so if my exam on Thursday says my reading's down or my math is down, and Miss Manzano Lee is my math teacher, I'll schedule time with her on Tuesday. And if I have a history project, I'll schedule time with Dr. McDonald on Thursday. And your students are literally like going through this process. They have a new executive director. First African-American woman to do that. And so I'm actually, working with her. And so these are ideas that I think are possibilities. But again, this is where the magic happens. And I think there's too much we could.
Purdue.
The Purdue Polytechnic High School in Indianapolis. They're growing. Their second school is going to be in South Bend, Indiana. But it's a project-based project. They have similar to our science and tech students. They have a client.
3DE. Well, 3DE is a problem.
Yeah. So they have a client very early on. But also it's also like an open campus. The students are there but they don't have to be there every day. It's a virtual component to it. But it is the most unique school I've ever seen in the country. I've been to a lot. But I think if it can be replicated, I'm not saying it has to be a 1-for-1, but if it's going to happen, it's going to happen because of people like you all and this committee and people in the community who are demanding it, but also a district that's pushing forward. Because before we had International High School, I don't know what the words, I don't know what the community was talking about, but we pushed it as a district because we knew it was important, and you see where it is now. But I just want to say this is really important, and we hope we continue to push push the needle on this. Thank you.
But one of the good things that you brought up is that we do travel to see programs, because even if it's a program that we have, and how do we get better? So even CTE, we went to Delaware to see that. When we thought about 3DE, we went all the way to Georgia, and we went somewhere else. And then now we have schools coming to us. So we find value in looking and finding it. We've talked a lot about ESOL. So we're like, where is it working? My first question is always like, who else has it? You know, it was immersion. We went to DC, we went to Virginia, because we know that just because even though we do have great things, how do we get better? You know, how do we not stay status quo? How do we say, is there another way to approach it? Are we doing the right work? You know, is there things we can eliminate? So we're constantly, I'm constantly writing saying, hey, I need my team to take more than one non-local travel, because I need them to go 3 different places to see something. And I applaud my team, because they love going out and coming back. And what we do as a district when we go, my team isn't the only one. I take someone from schools. I take someone usually potentially from Doug's team. Like, we try to make sure that we're well represented, because you need multiple people giving input. Same way when the schools go visit, they take someone from my team for school side. They take someone from my team, because we want to be well represented. But we'll look into this just so that we can see. The online campus is another example. Like, when we started that online campus, we know that we can get it to a place where it's even more strategic than how we have it now that we've gotten it up and lifted. And so it's like, how do you continue to let it grow, and how do you continue to let it get better? So I thank you for that, but I did write it down, Board Member Valentine, so we could take a look.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. If I could piggyback from what Board Member Valentine said, Dr. White and Board Member Valentine, I want to chime in. My sons also went to Montessori. And what I remember as Board Member Valentine was talking about how they perform is, we were told when they first got in the 3-year-old program, and at the time, I'm dating myself, but it was Miss Pap at the time, and they said, don't look at the 3rd grade Miss Pap scores, and they were very transparent with us. And we're parents of pre-Ks, and say, don't look at the 3rd grade Miss Pap scores, but by the time they get to 5th grade, you're going to see that they're going to outperform their counterparts. And we trusted that, and they delivered. Whatever they did, like you said, I don't know, because they don't give homework, because we can't really help them with the homework. And they didn't do that well in the 3rd grade, but by the time they got to 5th grade, they were outperforming, because the state test didn't match the Montessori curriculum. So I wonder whether those are some things we need to start looking at across the board, because when we look at our data, sometimes we need to look at how they perform as they come across the board in K-12. But I was going to ask about, you talked a little bit about the training, and I know that with Montessori, even with IB, this specialty training that they have to attend. Is it something that we need to consider? And I'm thinking forefront, trying to be intentional about when we go through the budget process next time. Is this something we need to start thinking about, cross-training teachers? And you don't have to answer this because when a Montessori teacher retires, leaves, or just decides I want to do something else, you need to retrain another teacher or find someone who's certified. Is it something we should consider, just to think about cross-training them? And then if an opening comes, we can say, okay, we know there's someone we're trained in XYZ school.
Yeah, so Montessori is over a year-long training to be Montessori certified. So to pick individuals on top of caseloads where we can't get people to come out now for PD, it's very expensive. So we try to ensure that when we do put a person in place, that our commitment is to get that person, even our leaders of Montessori buildings, trained. Sometimes you get a principal, they're not Montessori. So we have to take them through the process. So we put money aside every year to ensure that they are trained. It's just that it's a lengthy training. IB and programs like that aren't as bad because they follow a particular curriculum. We send them out to training. And Dezanne and her team has money set aside for a certain amount of professional developments, a certain amount of opportunities for conferences where all of our staff that are in those schools have a chance to go on a rotating basis. So they're not as bad. Montessori is probably the hardest. And then immersion isn't about the training. Immersion is about finding someone who has the right credentials and certification period of like world language plus elementary education. It's what the state says you need in order to be certified is the bigger issue there. Montessori is the hardest one in terms of the core training.
Thank you. And I commend your team because those programs have been running for quite a while now, and you've been able to maintain and keep the programs running strong. So thank you. Board Member Adam Stafford.
Yes, I had a question in regards to Montessori, specifically about a new model that I've become aware of, where they have a teacher classroom of one. It's called the school program is called Wildflower Schools. Have you guys heard of that program? But basically, these are teacher-led Montessori programs, like a classroom, like micro classrooms. And that could be an interesting thing to look at, given the infrastructure that we already have for Montessori and the great desire from families and community members. And actually some parents, I became aware of this model, but then some parents and community members actually reached out to me to talk about teacher-led classrooms and, you know, if the district had done something like that in the past. So that's just something I wanted to share. So I also wanted to ask something that Board Member Valentine and I had brought up previously to the chair, was an idea for us to take some of the discussions outside of the Academic Achievement Committee and actually form a work group to look at some of these issues on a broader level. And I wanted to toss it over to Board Member Valentine. He had some good ideas on this as well, but I can also read some of what we put together in our proposal for that. And maybe we could discuss it as a group here as well.
No, I mean, I appreciate my colleague. I'm gonna ask one question, then I'll definitely jump into this. I think the point that Dr. Miller mentioned as relates to the Montessori, to sort of the trust that we as parents put into our system. And I don't want to just sort of belabor the Montessori model, but I know at least at John Hanson, there are a number of parents who pull their children out because they just don't see what they think they should see at a certain point, because we're all sort of functioning on this traditional model of, I want to see grades, I want my child in a certain program, and how come they're not this, how come they're not that? This is not going to prepare them for high school. So around 6th grade, John Hanson loses a lot of students because they want to put them in the mainstream middle school to socialize them. And so there's clearly a conversation to be had with parents about sort of trusting the process throughout the process, but also similar to other programs, and really introducing parents into programs that are under enrolled or they don't understand, and so they don't apply because they're not sure, like, what does IB mean? What is this P-TECH? What is this IB? And so before we sort of get into other discussions, can we talk about sort of, you know, this conversation with parents about the importance of these programs, but also like trusting the process so that they stay in the programs and don't leave too early because it's not something that they've went through their K-12 experience. And it is innovative. Innovation is going to, and change is going to make people uncomfortable. But this is something we have to get used to, because if we're going to continue to push change, we're going to continue to have parents who are a little bit uncomfortable with the grading and assessments and accountability and freedom and no homework, that I think we all think is an indication of rigor, when in some cases it's not.
Here, Desan, do you have anything that you want to say back to that? You know, I always have an answer, but I always like to yield.
Well, I will just say that not only with Montessori, just like with our immersion programs, when students are going through the process and at first you think, oh, I know a little bit of Spanish, I can help out, or they just have the elementary level. And as they're progressing, we try to use the research as the model to present to parents to show this is that your children are going to outperform you with language. And all of the research shows that that cognitive benefit of learning the language is going to be beneficial for them in the long run, and making sure that we're sharing that from the very beginning with parents so that they don't back their children out of the programs, and so that they do continue with immersion, with Montessori, with any program where you might see some lag, maybe in the beginning, but then they're going to far out perform their peers just because of the programs. And so that's the work that we're doing with parents to make sure that they understand from the very beginning what the research says. And so we are hoping that they not only trust us, but they trust the research that we are presenting to them from across the nation, from sometimes across the world, around how students benefit from these programs.
And I'll just add to that, by the time we get students to, I always say 7th grade matters. When you're talking to your community, 7th grade matters, because in a lot of places, like when we looked at an equity model, science and tech and aviation are the 2 programs where we enter every student, like you don't have to apply, because we wanted to make sure we found that we had students whose parents would never even apply. And so we put everybody into those pools, and then, we go by the formula. But 7th grade matters because those are the grades that start hitting. But we also allow our students to go through J Finance Park. They start talking about careers. And then you get kids in high school, you take an AHS, amazing program. But if you want to do sports, you'll have some parents that say, I don't want to go to AHS because they say, we don't do sports at AHS. So children's opinion, I think, also matter. And then sometimes it's what Kia said, you get parents who pick programs for their children, even if their children don't want to go. We're trying to pick the best program for our child. And then you get parents that get frustrated. Like, my child's in French, I don't know what they're saying. I can't help them. I don't know, if they're passing or failing, the teacher's saying this, but I have no control over their success. And then so it's so many different things, but know that we try to have a lot of parent meetings at the individual schools. That's why we put coordinators there to have conversations with parents, to make sure that parents know what to expect from the beginning. We're going to tell you for immersion, they're not going to speak any English to them. And in language, they're not going to do well. So they, like Desiree said, they get to 3rd grade, all of a sudden they know enough language. Then we kick in English in 2nd grade, right? So it's every program has its own unique at those younger ages. By the time they get to high school, they're ready to perform. They're ready to identify that, yes, I am interested in teacher prep, or yes, I am interested in science and tech, or yes, I'm interested in doing a CTE program because I want to try out if I like nursing, or I want to try out if I like computer technology, or I want to try these other things. And so it's this very delicate balance with parents, trying to keep them encouraged, trying to let them know about the different opportunities, trying to let them know, hey, put your child out there, because you always have a boundary school where you can go back home if for some reason things don't go well. And so we've identified that and really try to work with our coordinators to empower our parents to be partners, especially across all of those programs.
No, thank you. I mean, I'll just say, I think this conversation is so important. I think it should continue. I think there's opportunities to really engage with parents in the process, parents who've already finished. And so parents like you and I, to talk to parents who are thinking about a Montessori, to explain what the other end of the spectrum looks like, what happens when they get to Penn State, and how well they performed, or how their language immersion helps. I have parents whose children are in the Foreign Service, and because of their language efficiency, like that's a testimony to just trusting. And so to my colleague, Sheila Adams Stafford's point, I mean, we recommend, that the school board dig deeper into this, work collaboratively with the superintendent and the administration on having these conversations with community partners, both locally and throughout the state, to really come to an understanding of how we can continue to grow these and be innovative and support one another and make them the jewel of the district that they are. And so we have proposed to create a work group that I imagine would probably start in the fall, but would be an opportunity, like a lot of work groups, is to really look at, what are the particular trends within these schools, academic performance, that we can share and spread out to tell the world, but also replicate throughout the district. How we look at sort of the screening process for how we identify certain students, whether it be TAG or other programs, and sort of how we look at if that's the best way to do it, or if there are other ways to do so. Looking at equity and availability in the programs and throughout the county. And we talked about a little bit earlier about sort of locations and even in some cases transportation as well. but also parents and why parents come and why some parents leave, but overall just how we push innovation. And so to the chair, Dr. Miller, if it would be their pleasure, I would recommend to this committee that we do create this work group and work directly with the administration on how to ensure that we have this conversation with the community, but also ensure that this program stays strong and continues to be strong long after all of us are gone.
And Board Member Valentine, thank you for bringing that up. And that's one of the reasons why I moved the meeting so that we can begin this discussion. But I recall, I think it was when we started this conversation that our CEO had some questions, and I don't recall when I was preparing for today, seeing the questions that, I don't know whether she had sent them to your board members, Adam Stafford.
I can summarize this. I know there were a couple, particularly because I know when we first started, there was some I think the appearance that we were conflating specialty programs and charter schools, which I believe, Dr. White can probably explain are sort of within the administration sort of different. And so that's a point to, I'll let Shayla jump in, but particularly whether this, I think her question was, is the work group going to be reviewing specialty programs, which are the programs that we're all talking about right now, or are they going to be looking specifically at charter schools, which will be a different work group and would focus strictly on charter school, the process, the funding, and things like that. And so I'll stop there. Just, I think Shayla, Adam Stafford had talked about that. I want to make sure we're still on the same page about moving forward.
Yeah, I think originally when we wrote this, we thought about having a session to discuss charter accountability. But I think you're right that would probably be a different work group or work session. And I think the broader board would also be interested in a work session on charter accountability as well, given our most recent conversation.
And so just to be clear, I mean, I'm going to cut you off, Madam Chair.
Oh, no worry.
But so with this particular work group, is it your recommendation, Adam Stafford, that we specifically work on specialty programs and not charter schools, or?
Well, I think if I'm looking back at the original proposal, it was for us to, some of the topics would be to focus on the best practices in tag screening and implementation, equity and specialty programming quality throughout the county, push factors, determining parent exodus, and charter accountability, systemic obstacles to success, opportunities for school design and innovation, and explore possibilities for varied school models like teacher-led schools, virtual schools, expeditionary schools, etc. I mean, I don't.
Well, let me.
Can I? Oh, sorry.
I want Dr. White to respond about, if this were to go through, whether it is more feasible for the administration to look at this separately from charter schools, or is it possible to look at to be able to have a work group where you touch on charter schools and specialty schools at not the same time, but throughout different work meetings with.
So, well, let me start, because I try to have very transparent conversations when I engage. What I will say is, I think you're bringing up, first and foremost, some very important conversations that are actually our strategic plan is kind of addressing. I'll give you a good example. So like one of the things we're looking at with TAG is equity, right? And, because we have a particular TAG identification process established by NSDE, but we identify when we're looking at certain populations of students that they don't always emerge, right? And so how do we go back and work in the confines of what we have and try to ensure that we're grabbing students who are not represented to the level by which we think they could be, and how can we make those type of changes? So we look at those things. I will say, though, I've been on a work group where my team had to come every single month and present information and tell you the best of the best that we have, what we do. And when I see the results at the end, my team was everything we brought, all the research we did, everything we said was not taken into consideration with what was provided at the end. And at the end of the day, my team is the one that then has to go and implement what's given to us when we've already said what we can't do. So sometimes it depends, I will say, on what is the goal. Is this a goal where, we're really coming to the table to work through things and our voices are heard? Or is this where you want something particular. And so we need to establish it that way to get to an end result. And I'm only trying to say that it's transparency. I'm not trying to say that with any disrespect, because I think some of the things that you have there are questions that we do ask ourselves, and it'd be good. You know, Dr. Strader always works with us around what are good research questions. And when board member Adam Stafford was speaking, I heard several like good research questions, right? Like exiting, like, so Doug, like maybe we should have an exit survey. And I'm just talking off the top of my head, but maybe we should have an exit survey when parents leave. Why are they leaving, right? How do we capture that data? How do we identify that? And how do we help make changes if there are changes to be made? You know, how do we look at tag, and how do we look at equity across multiple programs? Have we done any research where we looked at every single program and saw where it shaped out, and, you know, where is the underrepresentation? But if it's about bringing my team together once a month to have conversations, to do a whole bunch of presentations, PowerPoints, to come to the table and not be heard, they're pulled in so many directions that I would prefer not to have it be that. So I'm definitely open and willing if we're talking about something different that looks different. That's the first part. If we're talking about charter, I think based on me watching the presentation the other night, that maybe we do it in batches. And so maybe you spend a good quarter and you really work understanding charter, how charter is created, what's our philosophy of charter, you know, how do we move forward, right? So that way we're not all over the place. Then you flip it, and maybe then we take on tag. Because if you bring so many voices to the table around multiple things, it can get lost. So to me, let's grab the highest ones or the biggest concept. So if equity is a concept, let's spend 2 months talking about equity. Let's have Dr. Strader look at equity across our programs, or our research team, however long that takes. You know, if they say they can't get that to us to December, then we know that we don't even need to talk about that until we get that data. Does that make sense? That way we can stay focused on something and come to like some ideas around concepts. And maybe that is something we take through academic achievement. Like, you know, maybe it's something that we bring to this committee to say, you know, for the first quarter, we want to look solely at how charters are run. We want to look at, you know, the next 2 months, we want to really spend time and delve deep into the next 3 months. We really want to talk in the system and what we can do to improve that. So those are just my first reactions and thoughts.
And I want to just say that I brought it as a discussion item because I knew that I couldn't, you know, it's not within my purview to start a work group, but I also was aware that there was some questions prior to me taking this on from the CEO. So I think in hearing the presentation today, and then what we have learned across the year with charters, that maybe it would be a good idea for us to look at this again and then get back to the CEO with her questions and then finalize it with the board chair. But I know Dr. White and I had been talking about, you know, each year, you know, as new board members come along, they give us the presentation of their academic programs, which they've broken down this year so, you know, eloquently for us. But considering us doing a problem of practice. So if this is a problem of practice that we really want to dig deep in, that is something that we can really talk about and really tease it out so that we're really intentional about what is the end goal. So I'm just throwing it out there in terms of a discussion item, because for us to just consider, since it's something that needs to start during the fall. Board member Adam Stafford, sorry.
Yes, no, I definitely hear what you're saying, Dr. White. And I think the goal of this is for us to co-create together, that it would be, you know, bringing together just an opportunity for us to really put our minds together and like Dr. Miller is saying, look at this from looking at it as like a problem of practice and really thinking collaboratively. I don't think that there are any pre-planned outcomes of this, other than to really have some deep thinking time and pulling together some of our local experts, national experts, and then just folks here on the board that, you know, do this work and want to engage in deeper thought partnership with you. I mean, just even in our conversation tonight, we talked about some of the models that, you know, were addressed in this proposal. And so, like, you know, getting that opportunity to actually, you know, come and really think about some possible solutions. And so, you know, I definitely would, you know, Curtis, this is more so, you know, your everyday wheelhouse. And I think that we could certainly do this as a work group. And I think if we were to pass this, we could, take it to the full board and really think about setting up a meeting, prior to that, to work with Dr. White and her team to co-define it around maybe some research questions that they have already, some questions that we have as the board. So it's not just a straight board sort of defined group. But I'm definitely open to us thinking about moving forward with it this evening.
So Board Member Board Member Valentine.
No, and I appreciate you, Dr. White. I do. I mean, I'll be frank as well. I think as far as a district, we've exhausted the charter school law in Maryland. So there's really not much of an agenda that we can, there's nothing we can do. And we're doing more obviously than any other district. We're the ones who are doing waivers on zip codes. We're doing more than most districts are. And so there's not a lot, we're not going to offer, all of a sudden offer transportation because until the state lets it, we're not going to all of a sudden offer, housing or buildings. And so I think to your point, and it's appreciated because I've been on those calls nights, not weekends, but nights, and I don't want to be on any meeting that I don't have to be on. I don't want to be on a meeting where my ideas aren't being appreciated either. I got kids and I got things I want to do, and that's why I'm not asking for another term on the school board. Honestly, but at the same time, I do think there are opportunities. I think to my colleague's point, are there sort of questions that you all have that I think we could come together and really just think outside of the box on. And for the most part, these working groups function as an opportunity to advise the board and to potentially create either policy or budgetary sort of considerations moving forward. In some cases, to substantiate certain programs or to sort of say this program is not working and we should move money somewhere else. And so, but that again is subject of a lot of deliberations and other committees that aren't necessarily this committee. And so there will be a number of other pieces at play. But again, I do see it as an opportunity to learn. Personally, I don't have sort of any preconceived idea other than that. I think that parents should have options. We do. I think parents should be informed about their options and understand with both eyes open what they're getting into. And how we use the community to help us do that. And so as we're looking at who's even on the working group, I think that's something we could also talk about. Would welcome recommendations from you all about who you think could be on a working group, bringing together stakeholders in the county who have not sort of been at the table with school board members. I talk a lot about this in the class I teach at Maryland around, we call it equity-based decision-making, where we level the playing field on conversations where a school board member and someone who's not a contractor, but someone who's actually working with our students directly, or someone who's a PTA president, or someone who's in the higher ed department, are all at the same table having a similar conversation and given opportunities to have equal voice in where the district is going. And I think this is an opportunity to do that. But again, I think it could be more of a conversation with you all as opposed to a directive. And I do appreciate my colleague saying, passing it here does not necessarily make it happen. Obviously, when it goes to the full board, and your response from the CEO and from you all will in many ways change that, or may say, you know what, let's just do, instead of doing that many, it's half as many meetings just for specialty programs, stop, take a breather, it's working for us. Do you want to, we can make it, do what we need to make it do. But I think we should start the conversation tonight.
Thank you, Board Member Valentine. I think the next steps with this is to forward the information to the board chair with the responses that were also for the CEO. And then we can see if we can reconvene a conversation around teasing out, once she gets it, because that's who actually moves forward with a work group. So we will forward the information to her. If you want to send it to me or send it directly to board chair. She was going to be here, but she couldn't be here with us tonight. So we can get the information to her and then make sure we have also the information we sent to the CEO that she had requested so that she has a whole packet to look at.
Just to be clear, I mean, does that include taking the vote on it as a committee tonight, or are you saying you want to wait till the chair sees it before we take a vote on the committee? I just want to be clear of the process you're referring to.
Well, for the committee, it was a discussion because the committee doesn't determine whether we have a work group, the chair does. So, but letting her know that it was brought to the committee and we had a discussion around it and forward her all of the information that was requested so that she can bring it to the board.
Okay, maybe I was confused about the process. My understanding that the committee would vote on work group before they went to the chair, but you're saying that the committees don't have a say in work groups?
Well, they have a discussion around it, then we give the information to the chair.
Okay, all
the
right.
Board chair.
That's a process. That's a process. Okay, I wasn't clear.
Thank you. So with that, if there aren't any more questions, I will go to 4.0. If colleagues, there were no follow-up items for April 17th committee meeting. And from previous meetings, all follow-up items are in board docs. So I would at this time like to thank Dr. White and Dr. Strader for bringing their teams and giving us a comprehensive overview of the specialty programs. And may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in, thank you. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. So we are adjourned at 7:02 and thank you. Have a good evening.